is the
2.5 minutes
Situation
after
Room.
7. Good morning. Happy Earth Day. This is Earth Day, so we'll be talking about that shortly. But before we do that, CT, today's proverb, Tafadali.
Other people's wisdom prevents a leader from being called a fool.
Say that again.
Other people's wisdom prevents a leader from being called a fool.
Okay. Brilliant. So let's talk about the day today. Earth Day 2021. Earth Day is observed to create awareness about pollution and to celebrate the environment of the blue planet. The theme of the day in this year, 2021, is Restore Our Earth. Every year, the Earth Day is observed on this day in order to create awareness about pollution and to celebrate the environment, to promote ecology and raise awareness of the growing problems of air, water, and soil pollution. The Earth Day, which was founded by Senator Gaylord Nelson, was first organized in 1970. The UN called it then International Mother Earth Day. This year, it's the 51st anniversary of Earth Day. The theme is Restore Our Earth. The theme examines natural processes, emerging green technologies, and innovative thinking that can restore the world's ecosystems. So, like you were saying, City, earlier, there are very many buzzwords that come in with nowadays, climate change and restoring the earth and what we can do for the ecosystem, our environment, what's happening. I think the conversation is to percolate down to individuals and knowing your impact on the climate as an individual. Then now you can go into as a community, as an organization, as a country, as a continent. Do we get to that point?
You know, if you ask me, and speaking purely as a lay person here, the thing that always strikes me as being strange is that every time I listen to talk about this environmental restoration, safety, whatever word you want to, whatever adjective you want to throw in, it brings me back to something very simple: how to be traditional. Because if I look at the traditional way in which Africans handled their affairs, we were very environmental friendly. We understood and knew exactly how to live with the beings around us, whether it was plants, whether it was animals. There was a way in which that balance was created and it was restored very, very well. Now the balance, I think, gets disrupted when you bring in modernization, you bring in industrialization, and everything that goes with it. Now, it isn't the only thing that happens, because we must evolve and we must change. But the change ought to have taken place long before we actually did some irreparable damage. Because some of the damage that has been done to this planet in some parts of the world, I don't see how we're going to repair it.
A lot of the damage that has been done on these parts of the earth were done by a select few, truth be told. And now everybody is being asked to take on the responsibility to either, catch up on time for the mistakes that a few made and making it seem as though they were all involved in the process. I'm always going to come from that point.
Do you hear any conversation about, well, we know what you contributed towards this harm, so if we're restoring it, you must take a bigger chunk of this restoration effort in ensuring, effort meaning money.
That conversation happens,
Yes.
and then it's just bandied around, and we're gonna do this. Yes, we'll do this.
And then the whole world is
put
brought
in
into
some
the discussion,
finance,
isn't
some
it?
funding into this. Our contribution will be this and the other. Just like you were saying. So there are those that understand what they have done, and they continue doing what they've done, fully well aware of the impact of what they're doing. And then there are those who don't know what they're doing, or they're just not doing it with the intention of polluting.
There's an aspect, though, of this that I find interesting, and that is the communication aspect, meaning this. You will find the conversations are started and encouraged and proliferated. It's like with a certain agenda, all right? Case in point, there's a story that appeared in yesterday's Business Daily. I read it and I found it interesting. Because how is it that when we talk about pollution and we talk about ensuring that we use safe energy sources, no one talks about the energy that is used by ships? They are by far the biggest guzzlers of fuel, given their size and given what they do. No one talks about it. It may be mentioned here and there. No one mentions it. Do you really think that it is accidental that it isn't mentioned? What ships do we know? The bulk of the trade that we have on this planet is through ships. Not planes, not trains, ships. So,
It's maritime.
yes.
Anyway, let's concentrate our conversation this morning on what local business can do to play their part and to be active in keeping planet Earth restored. This is the theme for this year's Earth Day, Restore Our Earth, and having a conversation about how businesses are contributing to climate change mitigation measures. Let's now bring in our guest this morning, Amadi Ebenezer. Ebenezer Amadi is a program manager for sustainable inclusive business at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, KEPSA. Good morning, Ebenezer. Good to see you again.
Good morning, Eric, CT, and Du.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to hear all of you.
It's good to see you.
Well, Ebenezer,
We can see you.
we know what you're saying, but it's okay. Today is Earth Day. We are restoring our Earth, and it's peace all around. Now, let's talk about local business, because that's what you do. You deal with businesses at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, a business member organization, and you have these programs on climate change mitigation at Sustainable Inclusive Business. First of all, what are the measures of the impact of climate change that an organization can have? So if you say that, as an organization, this is what we're doing, what would be the measures of this is our impact on climate change?
So thank you so much for the question. I'll take it a few steps back when you talked about the Earth Day and what the focus is on and when it began. That's in 1970, but went global in 1990. So that means that's 31 years since it went global and 51 years since the Earth Day began in 1970. So, and the focus here is on three things that you mentioned. That's air, water, and land. And in any business, we operate in the environment, and the focus then will be on the profits, people, and planet. So in this case, then if we are producing items that are being taken to the market, then it means that the business will need to look at the design of the product so to ensure that it does not harm the environment. There has been a conversation on plastics. There has a conversation also on emissions of greenhouse gases. So most companies are also trying to integrate the sustainability angle into the plans. So something that they also do is report on an annual basis. They call that sustainability reporting. And you notice that companies are also beginning to bring in focal persons or experts on matters sustainability to try and look at their processes, their procurement, and even their interaction with customers. CT just mentioned the Gazlas in terms of consumption of fuel, and also looking at greenhouse gas emissions. You'll notice that in Africa contributes 4% to the global emissions. China is at 23%. The US is at 19%. So all this, the three things that I've talked about, that is land, air, and water, we need to focus on that. But the essence of the Earth Day is to try and increase awareness so that businesses and also the public can become active in taking care of the environment.
Let me ask something, if I may, Ebenezer. Awareness is all good and well. Tell me about the focus you have on the benefits, because if people don't understand the benefits of what is being propagated, they will certainly not chime with it.
Okay. The quick thing that we can look at, this morning it's raining, right? And we can quickly look at the impact of climate change on weather patterns. Just last year, was it 2 years ago, we saw that there was a change between the long rains and the short rains, where the weatherman was describing it and saying that during the short rains, we had more wet days, meaning that we had longer periods of time when it was raining, and during the long short rains, there were shorter wet days. So it means it affects us. Going back to the sectors, I take an example of the agriculture sector. You find that farmers planted and were ready because they knew the rains were coming, and then midway the rain kind of stopped. So it disrupted their plans and bringing losses. So that is the point that the common man will understand the impact of global warming to their personal life or to their business. So we are bringing it home, closer to our doorstep, rather than talking about the using big words in terms of what is happening elsewhere. So we are bringing it home to Kenya. And the other thing is also on emissions of gases, and sometimes it affects our respiratory system. So that's also one of the negative impacts that us not taking care of the environment, it affects our lives directly. So as businesses, then the major thing here is to look at their contribution in terms of taking care of the environment. One example that I can quickly share with you is on manufacturers doing what we call the energy audits. So mostly what it entails is looking at their consumption of usage of electricity and also the efficiency of their machines. So if the efficiency of the machines is poor, it means that they're consuming more but producing less. So those are the aspects that businesses are beginning to look at within their processes of manufacturing and production of their goods. And then begin to integrate new technology and also what we call a green power.
Also, I mean, just looking at the conversation and then looking at the importance that everybody's placing on this now, then you start to realize that notwithstanding the whole conversation that is taking place around who has contributed what, then there's a responsibility that individuals and then individual companies and organizations then need to play in all of this. Because if you don't, then you're not going to have much more within the lines within which to operate. That if we're looking at the environment and then protecting it so that you can have something to fall back on tomorrow, then becomes paramount in your operations. But I think also it needs to go beyond just saying we need to do something to protect the environment and protect the earth, but from an understanding on an individual basis what it means if you actually do not do this. And I always go back to this, Amadi, that beyond just saying that we need to understand about land, air, water use, and we need to understand about protecting the environment. Do we have, on an individual basis, because it's individuals who make up companies who then make these decisions, do we have that inherent understanding of why we ought to do this? And beyond these initiatives that are being put in place, public awareness, how heavy then do we need to go on this?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ndu, for the question. Now, yes, of course, as you mentioned, the organizations are formed by individuals, and it's individuals that run these companies. So at KEPSA, we are running an initiative that is called the Climate Business Information Network, where we're trying to increase the understanding of climate change issues. Of course, the experts also in different industries, some of them also understand this concept, but they have not been implementing it. So that, in a sense, brings an awakening for them to integrate these aspects into their processes of business. Understanding and awareness is key. I mean, beginning from where CT asked the question, is awareness really enough? I'll compare it to a company beginning to develop its strategic plan, and then ensuring that their employees are aware of the vision that they have. So a leader, in a sense, the definition is someone who is able to influence and influence others to follow them. So if you lack a sense of the ability to pass the knowledge or show them the vision, that means that your leadership skills are a bit wanting. You might be a good expert in the area that you studied, or expert in your area and field, but leadership in itself is a different angle. So that's what we try to champion at KEPSA. And I can tell you for a fact, the leaders that we have here are keen to be able to contribute to matters on sustainability, on environment. Because when you talk about sustainability, there is the angle of the company meeting its obligation. That's in the short term and in the long run. But we also look at the angle of your environment. And that's why companies are beginning to invest in corporate social responsibility. But now we are encouraging them not just to look at it as a one-time thing to help the community around. So we are changing it a little bit and looking at it as an investment. Because if the environment becomes better, then you're able to get your produce, your goods, if you're in the agriculture sector, or if you're in the tourism sector. Of course, all these aspects then contribute to the profitability of your business.
You know, as you talk about all these things that organizations and companies can do, sometimes you talk to people about climate change and they tell you these are buzzwords, some very nice buzzwords, and there's a lot of money. There's billions of money in this industry called environment and climate change. People are making money just, talking and saying great things and using heavy words. But down on the ground, how are organizations, as they work on the CSR, on what they're sponsoring environment cleaning days and planting trees, is there a focus on how they can reduce their own contribution to climate change by not planting trees, but by looking at their own processes, their business processes, and saying, we pollute this much, we deal with our waste this way, this is what we do in terms of recycling. Yes, this is what you were telling us the other day about plastics, but beyond that, we see companies that pollute the rivers, companies that pollute the air. Is there a program that actually looks at, last year your emissions were this high, this year your emissions need to reduce?
Yes. Thank you so much, Eric. So you just reminded me that, in every country we always follow the plans that the government has set out. And in this case, you'll find that most African countries submitted their nationally determined contribution and also reporting on the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Just last year, Kenya revised its targets, and we are looking at reducing the carbon emissions by 33%. So it's through that plan then we plug in as a private sector and support the businesses to track their impact on the environment. So we are called this is looking at the contribution of the private sector in either reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and also looking at the variable indicators that the government is supposed to report to. That is through the United Nations Framework Convention for climate change. So that's an element where we support businesses to be able to track, and this we do on an annual basis. So companies are being encouraged also to track, because we say what you cannot track, then you cannot improve. So that then encourages them to look at their processes. And of course, in different angles, then we also encourage this through the awards that we have on an annual basis by looking at different indicators on how businesses are improving their processes. And that is why, as I mentioned before, you'll see an increase in companies trying to bring in experts on matters of sustainability so that they're able to look at their procurement. So they call it green taking procurement to be green, just the same way where KEPSA, we greened our National Business Agenda 3. So looking at the aspects of sustainability in every pillar, so the three pillars that we have, the economic pillar, the social pillar, and the political pillar.
So with all the geopolitics around this, I mean, just from, whether it's buzzwords or we're talking about billions of dollars around the conversation, if you look at individual countries now, specifically at Kenya, how, on a scale of 1 to 10, how necessary would you say it would be to pay attention to what's happening with the planet and in terms of protecting it in the future, putting all the politics aside and saying what is then necessary to do for business and for country? How far up the rung is Kenya? And whether we're looking at small and big business, how seriously must we take this?
So on a scale to 10, I'll give it an 11. So that's more than 100%. So basically what I'm trying to say is that it's of essence for us to focus on this topic because then we realize that if you look at the numbers in terms of the predictions that are being talked about, is that climate change will have a cost of 7.9 trillion to the global economy by 2050. And this is a huge amount if you convert it and look at it from monetary value. So that tells us that this is a very important aspect for us to plug in, and not just, as Eric is saying, use big words and try to talk about this once in a year during the Earth Day and leave it at that and wait for the conversation to begin the next year. The quick question that I will ask is, when did you know that Earth Day existed? Yet this was started back in 1970. So most people don't even know that there is this drive to try and encourage businesses, encourage the community to plug in. But of course now through yourselves, media also plays a critical role in ensuring that the public is made aware and they are educated on this matter. So yes, that's a very important aspect for businesses to plug in, and also the community. The community is very keen in contributing or plugging in because they kind of feel the pinch directly. If I give you an example of the Mau area, it's something that affected the people in that area directly. So if a person who was living in that area basically knows what the water tower contributed to them as farmers, then they will be to contribute in trying to turn around the negative effects or impact that we have caused by human activities. That's by cutting down the trees and not thinking about the future, not thinking about tomorrow. But also
replenishing the same.
Our government also plays a role in trying to give us a sense of direction, and through the programs that we have.
That's very true. Amadi Ebeneza, thank you very much for joining us today, and happy Earth Day to you. Amadi is the Program Manager, Sustainable Inclusive Business at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. Have a lovely day as you restore our Earth, Amadi.
You too, and I liked what how CT began the program with his proverb. As I was thinking about it, I think the explanation there is that if a leader has good advisors and doesn't know much, then he will look good.
That's very good.
He or she.
That's very true. That's very true. As this is being celebrated around the country, in America, U.S. President Joe Biden will be hosting the Global Climate Summit today and tomorrow. Leaders of 40 nations, including those demonstrating strong climate leadership vulnerable to global warming or following groundbreaking approaches to a net zero economy, and the leaders of the big energy consuming nations like India, China, Russia are likely to attend this particular meeting. 27 minutes after 7, time for a quick break. We'll be back shortly.